Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. We won. We won.
All right. Well, we wanted to talk a little bit about the presidential inauguration at this moment. Let's listen to this, and then we're going to ask some questions as well. And what significance does this have for you prophetically? At this moment, we're sharing our opinion. We're not making any major prediction here, but we would like to hear from both of you. What does that mean? Trump being president again. What does that say to you prophetically? Okay, so we're going to think about that. Let's move on. Take a listen.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States
the office of President of the United States
and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
All right. So this is huge. Some people are pointing out that President Trump did not put his hands on the Bible. I'm not sure if some of you have noticed that. Some believe that that's a statement. And I began to do a little bit of research. And what I found out, according to the New York Post, one of the reasons that is because by the time his wife got there, they had already began. Inauguration already started. So that's why he didn't put his hands on the Bible. That's at least that's what this is saying here. Anyway, let's skip that one. So yeah, Elder Tobias, if you have any thought, does anything stand out to you about the Trump's presidency? Do you see any prophetic significance in that?
Well, I think my initial thoughts is time will tell. I think it is significant. Well, I'll tell you this much. I was just talking to my wife about this on our way home. This Trump administration is going to be quite different from the last, I believe. If you notice, the business world has absolutely rallied behind him. You have people like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Tim Cook. I can't remember the gentleman, the CEO of Google there. You have all these big influential businessmen, tech guys, billionaires in the room with him in support. It seems to me that there's a huge shift in society, not just amongst the people, but the hierarchy, if you will, shifting, as you can see, maybe to the winning side and saying, hey, we don't want no problems with this guy. Let's just go ahead and join him. We can't beat him, join him. So prophetically, he can make some serious changes in this country. Whether that's good or bad, we will see. But he is now in a position to make some serious changes that I think will have repercussions on this country, probably more than most presidents have had. And so that's my initial thoughts, but it's a different presidency for sure. It's not like the last one. He's a lot more powerful in my eyes. He has both the House and the Senate. A lot more powerful president for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you with that. There were a number of things that he began to do as soon as he became president. There were these number of executive orders that began to be signed. We're talking about over 200 of them on day one. I mean, it's outrageous. Like this, like a turning over the entire script all over again. We're talking about January 6th jailers, people who've been jailed in January 6th, and some of them we can get into the politics of it. He is freeing over 1,500 of them. Trump move program, to end program and let migrants from 4 nations into the U.S. Wow. Close the border, a number of things, emergency declaration here. But I'll tell you what, there's a lot here. Some of the political side of the thing good and bad. Some people are going to agree, disagree, the number of things. But I tell you, there was one in particular that really caught my attention. The World Health Organization.
Yes.
Yeah. Some people say he ain't going to do nothing. It's just smoke screen. But the idea of withdrawing from
Pulling
that,
out of that, yeah.
that's huge.
I didn't see that one coming. Yeah, at all.
I did.
You did?
Oh,
Really?
absolutely.
I didn't know that was on the list.
Because the World Health Organization, he opposes them. He opposed them last time too.
Yeah.
He withdrew
Yeah.
from.
I know the Paris Climate
Yeah.
Agreement, he withdrew from
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Oh, I totally can see why he withdrew from that.
Yeah. Wow.
But
Yeah, let's see.
Like
Let's see where it is going.
the elder said, time will tell.
Time will tell. Yeah, yeah. It's right now you can't really make a
So early.
prophetic prediction of what's gonna happen. But what you do see prophetically is the swinging, from the left to the right, like the king of the north push and the king of the south push.
100%.
So you get that idea of the two ideologies are consistently fighting with each other. So it's like when every time there's a swing, there's a shift in society. It's not like they're swinging and remain the same. It's like they're swinging and the world is changing. So there is also an incline to the way things are done as well. So that's kind of very interesting. And I think I have a video here of Walter Veith kind of like explaining this. And I think this is a good one. I'll share this with you. Let me see. So this is what is known as the Hegelian dialectic. So agenda, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis.
To the uninitiate, it seems as if the white race is supreme. Once you get to the higher initiates, there is a different story, and Nimrod was worshipped as black or white. There is chaos created between the races, so you have the Ku Klux Klan, which is anti-black, and you have organizations which are equally anti-white. This is called dialectic thinking. Remember the Hegelian principle? You create friction between the races so that you can have synthesis in the end and bring about a new world order. So in order to unite the races, the best thing to do is to create chaos amongst the races until the pain of separation exceeds the pain of unity. You understand the Hegelian dialectic thinking? It's brilliant. It's sick, but it's brilliant. And it doesn't matter if you sacrifice hundreds of thousands of lives to achieve your objective, because the end justifies the means. It really is a terrible doctrine.
So that's one side of the story. If you have any thought, anytime. Scott Ritzimer, in that sermon, Now is the Time, 40 minutes in, began to speak about the fourth turning. Are you familiar with the term, the fourth turning?
Yes.
Every generation goes through these turnings. Yeah. When we had Conrad Vine's video, he spoke on that a little bit. So he is addressing that as well. He's showing what's happening in America and where things are going prophetically. And I think Scott Ritzimer was so good. This is a good sermon to listen to, guys. Now is the time, Scott Ritzimer on the Belt of Truth channel. We're going to take about 5 or 6 minutes of this because he's going to put a cap on it for us.
Liberal democracy because the Soviet Union fell. And all Christians are going, are you joking? Bible prophecy ends with repression, not the universalization of liberty. But it doesn't end there. It ends and then we continue, don't we? So I've got that bar dropping down there at Christ's second coming, but there's actually more to the story still after that, as you know. But I want to superimpose, try this on for size. You thinking with me? Think, okay? I want to superimpose the cyclical over the linear. Because I think you guys are right. There's a lot of degradation of man. You agreed with me the wheat are growing too. But aren't there also cycles in history? Think about just the very movement of the heavenly bodies. Time is a cycle, a continual cycle. So of course we would then recognize that history operates on cycles. But the Western worldview has really gotten timelines in our head. So it sometimes takes a little bit for us to think about that perspective as well. I'm going to propose that they're both biblical when done right. The Eastern view of things is that everything is a perpetual cycle. That's not right. I've got cycles moving forward on the timeline. Do you see that? So there's a cyclical element to the timeline of history that is taking us to a destination, Christ's second coming. And here's some cycles. Pride and wickedness breed destruction and suffering, which breed humility and repentance, don't they? Which lead to righteousness and prosperity, which then when we get spoiled lead to pride and wickedness, which lead to destruction and suffering. Is this the history of ancient Israel as well? Ancient Rome, hard times make strong men, they said. Strong men make good times. Good times make weak men. Weak men make hard times. And hard times make strong men again. And it cycles. In fact, Roman historians were able, it was such a long empire, they were able to observe after some time enough of their own history that they noted that things were cycling in 80 to 110 year periods of time. So this is not some new scholarly thing. I'll tell you about the fourth turning and the scholars who are looking at this right now. But this has been seen way back then. In fact, in their pagan worldview, they earned reputation as prophets because they were predictive in their analysis of history and what to be expecting next because of cyclical trends. It's not a rule, it's not a law, but they're tendencies. Here's another cycle, just so we can get the idea that things do tend to cycle. A history of an empire tends to go like this from birth to death. Bondage. In the biblical, we were slaves in Egypt, right? From bondage to spiritual freedom, let my people go. Spiritual freedom to great courage. Do you think of Caleb and Joshua when you think of great courage? From great courage to liberty, as well as its corollary danger, libertine living. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Liberty leads to abundance, land of milk and honey. Prosperity is derived from a free society. Abundance leads to complacency. God warned the Israelites, when you get into the land of Canaan, don't think my hands have produced this wealth, and forget your God. That's complacency. And complacency leads to dependency. And you're right back at, give us a king. We want to be slaves again. We were slaves in Egypt is where we started this. And Samuel warned them, you don't want a king? He's going to do this to your children. He's going to tax you this way and that way. But that's the cycle we human beings tend to do, isn't it? Empires, by the way, are most dangerous when they're dying. They become reckless, foolish, and evil. Is America at the end of an imperial cycle? Think about this. Let's look at this cycle and apply it to U.S. history. Poverty brings patience. The Revolutionary War era and the early formation of our republic. Patience brings peace, relative peace for that period, at least in the early republic. Peace makes plenty, 19th century booming railroads, etc. Early Industrial Revolution. Plenty makes pride, Gilded Age, Reconstruction, post-Civil War era of corruption, and the beginning of empire, because pride breeds war, and the American imperialism adventures began in 1898 with the Spanish-American War and the acquisition of colonial possessions. War brings spoil. That sure is the post-World War II era, isn't it? And then spoil brings poverty. Are we on the brink of that? Are we so into the spoil, becoming dependent again? Can I show you one more cycle of 7? It's interesting how it's 7, and we're at the end of it in America right now. Here's another 7. It's not cycles, but there have been 7 party realignments in American history. The first, 1788, Federalists versus Democratic Republicans. 1828, Jacksonian Democrat Party. 1860, Lincoln founds the Republican Party. 1896, that's where that military adventurism came in with the Republican Party under William McKinley. 1932, the New Deal, a remake of the Democratic Party. 1980, the Reagan Revolution, a remake of the Republican Party. 2016, Trump populism. 7 party realignments, all approximately 40 years apart, interestingly. Okay, now I got to show you the fourth turning, Neil Howe. This historian has done a masterful work, and I don't endorse everything in his book. The fourth turning is here, or his original work from 20, 30 years ago with his colleague Strauss. But it's the Strauss-Howe cyclical view of history theory, and they're not the first ones to come up with a cyclical view of history, but they're noting the trends, and I want to share some things with you on how they arrived there. Think about a human life. Isn't society comprised of a lot of individual humans? And a human life, you think of the lifespan as kind of divided into 4 seasons, if you will. Childhood, that ends about age 21, right? For full privileges, if you can call them that in our society. Then, so that would be like spring. The summer season of life would be from 21 till you're going to be middle-aged. Now, I may not want to face the facts on when they divide this demographically, but they tend to do it by who was the youngest president ever elected, and that was age 43. So then after 43, you're in middle age, you're in the fall season. And then when do you have full Medicare benefits as a senior? 65. So that's your winter season. I think winter is beautiful, by the way, to the seniors in the room. The hoary head on the hoary mountains and so on. So it's beautiful. So viewing history as a succession of generations is actually a biblical way to do timelines. It's so-and-so begat so-and-so, he begat so-and-so, and he died. So thinking about this in terms of generations, age groups that form a culture within themselves. You know it. When I say baby boomers, you're immediately thinking some ways they were and are. When you hear Gen X, you're starting to think about some ways that they are. And this is all taking us somewhere to the crisis scenario we're going to, because each of these seasons has a flavor to it, the way that it is. But if human beings have 4 seasons in their life, and generations form around collections of human beings, and societies are formed by those generations of people, then perhaps history might kind of cycle in spring, summer, fall, and winter over a 80 to 110 year period of time, perhaps. And that's where Neil Howe comes in. And he's looked at 80 to 105, the period he refers to as a seculum. And I want to say this is not some sideshow, like, goofball history. And I'll say I never heard of this in all my history profession until after academia and studied this. So it is kind of marginalized in the history profession. But Al Gore said he really appreciated the scholarship of these guys. So this is at least respected by the power elite themselves in Al Gore's case. So I want to describe for you from the book the season of the crisis season, the winter season, because that can tell us if we are in one of those, then we can also expect, just like maybe those predictions make us be aware of the potential for, can we expect some things to be cycling in about now? So this was a crisis season, this was a crisis season, and this was a crisis season. Do you recognize those three? When you look at Howe's cycles of history, you get the American Revolution, or the War for Independence, as a winter season of history. 1781 was the British surrender to the Americans. 1781. 1861 was the beginning of the Civil War, and 1941 was the U.S. entrance into World War II. Did you notice something? Those were exactly the same periods apart. 1781, 1861, 1941. Well, that's kind of interesting. So then shouldn't we expect in 2021 to be starting to see some major crisis if the cycle would continue? And by the way, we're going to bring prophecy back into this little social science exercise we're doing to see that God is sovereign. I won't get ahead of myself. You'll see the scriptures on that in just a moment. But it's interesting that the COVID war, if you will, one of the greatest, biggest, most tumultuous events in most of our lifetimes happened in just that time period. Also, it's interesting that crisis seasons tend to bring out notable presidents. Historians rank their best presidents and so on, and you get the 3 probably most well-known presidents that came out of crisis seasons, winter seasons, if you will, in American history. I want to zoom out and go to Anglo-American history, because this is really where it's going to come home to us. There were 6 giant wars in Anglo-American history. Each was in a crisis season, a winter season of the Neil, Howe, and Strauss cyclical view of history. Everyone landed where it was supposed to. So it begins to be almost predictive, not in the sense of prophecy, but in where you go, I think there is a likelihood that now in this time range, we might expect giant war. And maybe war changes forms, maybe we're looking at, 5th generational and information and blah, 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 and then maybe it won't be the kinds of wars we've seen in the past. But I want to ask these questions about coming crises in the winter season that we live in, because what is the most likely time window for a fulfillment of Revelation 13, which we cannot set dates for? But should we be especially sitting up and taking notice right now as we are in a winter season? I'll tell you, I'm going to jump right forward right now. Our crisis season began in 2008 with the great financial crisis, and it's scheduled to roughly wrap up 2032. And I don't put afar off the close of time 5 years, so I don't plan to have that long. But just so you know when we're on schedule for our crisis season ending, it's kind of interesting. We had 9/11 as a precursor to it. There's usually a tremor event that precedes the beginning of a crisis season. Then the crisis season begins usually with an economic event. And then there is substantial war in the latter half of the crisis season. So that's what we're wondering about, is how does this relate to Revelation 13? You know what summer seasons are like? Some of you lived through one. I've not lived through a summer season. I've only lived through a fall and a winter season. But a summer season, there was a summer season, an awakening with Martin Luther. The history's cycled, and in the 1600s we had another awakening, the Puritan awakening in England. Then you had another, are you noticing a theme here? And there seems to be an awakening during the summer season, the Great Awakening in the 1740s and 50s in the American colonies. The Great Second Advent Awakening. Our own history fits into these cycles. We were in a summer season in the development of that. There was also the Second Great Awake happening just before that. And then the ones some of you guys lived through, the awakening of the Jesus freaks and the New Age movement and the Aquarius and all of that kind of thing of the 60s and 70s. Summer seasons tend to be philosophical, not as likely candidates for a crackdown on no buy, no sell, death decree, forced worship. It's just not as likely. It could happen, but fall seasons are what I grew up in the 80s and 90s. Fall seasons tend to be more individualist, more skeptical of institutional structures. That's why maybe a lot of Gen X people are asking tough questions through COVID, because they were raised with that mindset. And it can get obnoxious too, by the way. I realize we can be that way, a little flaunting our individuality excessively and not being like Gen Z. My kids' friends, these are the nicest kids. Has anybody noticed kids are nicer now than they were 15 years? They were sure nicer than I was. I can tell you that. The demographics, I'm looking at generational demographics, and Gen Z tends to be wanting to please their teachers and parents more than my generation did. And so I find that to be a positive thing. We'll get to them more in just a second. But
well, I know we got cut off at the end, so I would like to get your thought, at least based on that video. Anything that stood out to you that Scott Ritzema was speaking about?
I think he did a whole series, I think,
Yes.
on this whole topic. I watched the whole thing. It's fascinating stuff. I can't. I'm glued to it every time I watch it. And I think we need to have our eyes opened, our ears perked. And like I said, with this administration and with everything, the way things are shaping up right now, it is, I know we keep saying, oh, it's ripe, it's prime time for, a Sunday law and whatnot. That's how I almost don't want to say it. But I think those cycles, whereas they're not prophetic and God is still sovereign, like Brother Ritzema said, I think we can use logic. We can use common sense and say, okay, here's a pattern, there's a pattern here. At the very least, there's no harm in saying, you know what, let's be about our Father's business, because it seems like things are shaping up. And if nothing happens, well, there's no harm in being ready anyways. Yeah. So powerful stuff though. I've shared the whole series he's done on this, because I think it's very, very enlightening and shows us where we are. Very, very good stuff.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I like the idea of the fourth turning.
Yeah.
Where things are headed. So it eventually shows the connection that there is with President Trump and that turning as well. And the way he ended it, we didn't get a chance to finish it. He ended the part showing that eventually humanity go back to trusting authority once again. In the trust of authority, then all the world wander after the beast. It's interesting how that goes. So in the midst of chaos, system failures, lack of trust in systems, we know what happened with the Fauci, Ouchie, and all of that. Everybody's questioning these systems. And then here goes a leader that rises to the top to bring solution, and everybody going back up that leader. And then we go back to trusting in authority. And then the beast, when the beast system comes to the top, the world then wander after the beast. It's like it's like,
that is powerful.
That's serious stuff, man.
Just the way he put that all together was really profound. Something for me, it takes me like 3 times to keep listening and reading to really start to get it. And
It's a lot.
it's very clear.
It's very
but
meaty.
it's yes.
Yeah. So we make sure we put in the link of this video, we're gonna make sure we put a link of that, because we're gonna chop it all up and put it there. So for those of you that are watching right now, what is your thought and perspective prophetically with a Trump presidency? Where do you think things are going? Is this the Hegelian dialectic? Is this American revival? Some people are saying this is going to be an American revival. Or are we heading toward tyranny? Are we heading toward the mark of the beast? I would like to have the conversation with you in a comment below. So